What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I've got Joe Graham here. He is a sales and what I say is a mindset coach as well. I don't know if he'll give himself credit for that, but he's definitely a sales coach now and a podcast host of the 150K podcast. He's actually been in sales for over 15 years, but within the last year decided to get into being a sales coach. So we're actually going to dive into that story a little bit and see what had him decide to go into that. But Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, and thank you, Phil, for letting me be on your show. I appreciate it. I've been in sales, like I said, for 15 years, but I kind of fell into it. And I know this is like on public speaking and all, but like I grew up in the country, Midwest, that kind of crazy thing where you're supposed to go and get a job and work there forever. And the company downsized. So I ended up getting into sales and I had no clue of what to do. Kind of like maybe what some people would be with public speaking. You know, you're afraid, you're nervous, whatever. And so I just started looking at people that could help me that were better and farther along in the business I was in and just started mimicking them to begin with. Now, I wouldn't say mimicking is always the best thing, but that's what I did. And I kind of fell into it. And then as it went, I started listening to podcasts, leveling up, and just trial and error, learning how to do sales, which is just public speaking. It's just one-on-one public speaking. So instead of, having a group of 30 to 100 to 1,000 people, you have one person that you have to captivate that whole time. But learning those skills actually applies great because I know a lot of people when they do public speaking, they'll focus on maybe their ideal client or they'll focus on one or two people in the audience. And that's their anchor for, public speaking and that type of stuff. But yeah, 15 years in sales. I started doing coaching because people started asking me for help. Like I was always helping with the different types of sales I've been doing, but they're like, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? How can you talk to a CEO and not be intimidated? And then the mindset is just the training that I've learned for so long. Like, you are the secret sauce to your business, to what you're doing. So if you don't level up, if you don't grow yourself personally, that's going to be a big opening where you're going to just, have a deficiency. So mindset comes into it 100%.
Yeah. And mindset really comes into like everything. So it's always a good pairing to have. I think a lot of people miss out if they don't bring mindset into their coaching. Although, it depends on the person. Some people really focus heavily on that mindset, and there's definitely areas where we need to focus on that. But I think it just naturally comes up. So you don't necessarily have to be a mindset coach. But I know with sales, it's a big thing you have to overcome mindset for real with that, because you're always getting told no, or not always, but you're getting told no a lot more times than yes. And how do you get your brain to switch that? Oh, don't worry about it. They said no. Okay, no big deal. Move on. Next opportunity, right? That's what no stands for. Next opportunity.
Well, here's the funny thing, and I teach it a little bit different. No might not be no forever. It just might mean no for now. It's not personal. It's not towards you. It might be your product's not right for them, your service is not right for them, or they're not just mentally ready to do it. So a lot of times getting over that fear of rejection is understanding that you are not really being rejected. It's your product, your service, or solution you're giving them. And once you can get that, it's like, cool. Okay, Phil. So guess what? I know right now it doesn't work for you. Can I reach out to you in 2 months? Would that be a better time? And I give them an exact date and you just carry it along. It's just like when you're dating a girl, you don't go to try to take them home right away. You want to build the relationship, get to know them, do the whole process. It's the same thing. No, it's just, okay, now we're actually getting into, is this for real or not?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and sometimes it's a confused mind as well, because especially when you're first getting into sales, you don't know how to speak properly about your product or your service, and you'll end up confusing your customer, which then they're not going to buy because, well, I don't know what I'm buying, I don't know what the benefit of it is, I don't even know what the product is. So, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's
What? A lot of times, first-time salespeople, and I think speakers do this as well, they over-present or they over-talk. So instead of listening to what your client or customer needs, they'll over-talk about that subject and they'll just, what I call product dump. Or if you're on stage, they're just hammering on their stuff, but they're not really having a guided conversation. So like the first couple of things I always like to tell people in sales, listen more. If you're on stage, know your audience, keep it simple. Keep it easy so that you can lead them and they can hear the story behind the words. Because we're storytellers, professional speakers or salespeople, we're storytellers. We're taking you down that path to get you to the place we want you to go.
Mm, that is so true. And yeah, and the storytelling is about drawing those emotions out. And it's not necessarily giving you the facts. Of course, you have to give the facts, the figures, all that good stuff for your audience or for that one person you're speaking to, trying to sell them. But it's that creating that emotional buy is what you really want to get, because whenever they're bought into you emotionally on stage, or they're bought
Mhm.
into the product emotionally when you're trying to sell them, or really trying to serve them, not sell them. I know
Yep.
you're big on that too. It's not about selling, it's about serving. That's when you're going to get them to be interested in your product or interested in you as the speaker. So yeah, such a good point. And before we get too into this, I want to go and ask that first question I like to ask people is, how did you get over the fear of public speaking?
A couple different ways. So I grew up in a little country town, and like in middle school, you're going through that whole crazy life. You're growing, your voice is cracking, you do all this stuff. I had a
Hmm.
super high voice when I was in middle school, and so I would get all like the lead singing roles. Well, we're in the auditorium, and not for like when the parents are there, but when all the kids are there, we're doing a performance for it, and the song was the
Mm.
Phantom of the Opera. And I had been thinking I was all that, singing and doing really well. Well, I don't know if you know the song Phantom Opera, but there's this really, really, really high part that you had to hit. When I went to sing, I hit the high part, my voice cracked in front of all my friends, in front of all the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. That's a very formative year.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just kept going. I just let it wash off me and kept going. And that was my first time of realizing, even if you make a mistake, as long as you keep going, it's okay. And then I
Mm.
took that into sales and into public speaking, because I've done some public speaking as well. Just if you mess up, like say you're on stage and you mess up and you're talking, tell them where you're at. Like if this is your first time speaking, say, you know what? This is my first time on stage. I'm a little bit nervous, because people love connection, people love authenticity, and people love it when you are vulnerable to them. So if you open yourself up, that's the easiest way. And then just get in it. Keep going. Keep getting in those situations. Because just like if you're lifting weights, if you're working out, any tools that you do, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the less fear you have of it.
Man, that's so good. And something as well to add to that, a lot of times when we're speaking on stage, you may have missed a point. And a lot of people, what they'll do, especially starting out, but oh, sorry, let me go back, and they'll want to like start over to be able to make
Yeah.
sure that they get the all the points in. Most people don't even know that you missed that point,
No, not at
because
all.
they don't know your speech. They don't know what's going on inside your head. So just keep going. And so I like that you did keep going no matter what. But you're right. That's a good thing to do to help make that connection. If you do mess up and it's a blatant mess up, like you're like cracking your voice or something like that. Oh, sorry, first time going through puberty.
Yep.
No, we
I
definitely
mean,
wouldn't say that, sixth, seventh, or eighth grade. But yeah, just explaining what's going on, because people are going to make that connection. And like I tell people as well, if you're on stage, people are admiring you for doing that. There's obviously going to be people out there judging you, but they're going to admire you for doing that. So if you actually mess up and fess up to it, they're actually going to be there to support you, because they're like, hey, I wouldn't even get on stage. So you messing up and owning to that, that's pretty awesome.
yeah. Well, and it's the thing that they say most people are scared of. It's like one of the top
Hmm.
ones is public speaking.
Yeah.
Um, but what I've noticed about the greatest public speakers is they don't always follow like a perfect little course, but they
Mm.
follow how their audience responds and how they can connect with them. So, like you said, being authentic, connecting with the audience, still having a plan. Don't just go up there and wing it unless you're really,
Yeah.
really good and been doing it for a long time. I don't recommend just winging it, but just making that connection and being vulnerable, you're 90% of the way there. And then as long as you have a clear, precise message.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. As long as you know what that end goal is, that's a good thing. Like with sales, there is that obvious end goal. You're trying to get the sale. You're trying to, or move on to whatever that next step is. Maybe you're not at the, hey, we're going to make that sale process, but hey, we're trying to collect that lead. We're trying to get all that information so we can come back and be able to present to you properly. But having that end goal in mind for each time you speak in front of that person or that audience is going to be the thing. And then you can kind of weave your way around to the end goal. I mean, I think podcasts are exactly like that. We were talking offline about how if we're pretty free flowing, there's no real script here, but we know where we're trying to get to. We know, hey, we're not going to go on for 2 or 3 hours for this
No.
podcast. We'll probably do anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Depending on the person, obviously, depending on whose podcast. Joe Rogan likes to do 3 hour podcasts, but we're going to make sure that, okay, by the end, we're going to close it out here instead of being like, oh, Joe, I'm so sorry, man. We're here at the top of the hour. I gotta go. And then just like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay, that was kind of weird. So we're kind of watching ourselves on that with the podcast. But when you know what that end goal is, where you're trying to go, you can be able to navigate yourself to that end goal. And if some little tangents come up, that's perfectly fine. Address them, go into them, and then pull yourself back to be able to stay on track.
Yeah.
So
Well, you
is
want to
that
captivate your audience.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, and that really goes into sales too, right? Where you're having that conversation, talking about your product. They may go off on some tangent, ask about something, and okay, you go off on that tangent with them, and then you bring it back. Okay, let's go
Mhm.
back and talk about this product. And so, how do you kind of navigate that water whenever it kind of goes off on a little bit of a tangent, or that you maybe go off on a tangent and bring it back? What's some tips that you give on that?
Sure. So if you get off course, because a lot of times when you're talking with people, we're communicating and maybe they'll go somewhere you're not thinking. Pretty much what I end up doing is summarizing what they're talking about to make sure that they're seen, heard, and they understand that I know where they're at. Then I
Mm,
might bring it back with a story, kind of like what we're talking about, like, oh yeah, and, my friend had that type of situation as well. Or I might be like, cool, I get that. Was there any other questions about what we were talking? Something to pull it back to what Jordan Belfort says, taking them down that straight line system. You want to make sure
mm,
you're still in control, because the biggest issue most salespeople run into and speakers is if you are not in control of where the conversation is going, you're going to shipwreck. So you always want to at least know how to pivot back to where you need to be, but still make sure your customer is seen, heard, and understood, because that's the biggest thing in sales. People buy because they like, trust, and believe you. People listen to speakers because they like, trust, and believe in you. It's the same thing. It's just when you're public speaking, it's a bigger audience. Whether you're selling them or not, it might just be you're trying to impact them for the good. That's still a sell. We all do sales throughout the day. Like
mm.
whether you're, yeah, and in almost everything you're doing, life's a sell. It's just how
Yeah.
are you presenting yourself?
Exactly, exactly. And so I want you mentioned this at the beginning, and I want you kind of to reemphasize this because in sales, obviously it's one-on-one conversation. You have a very captured audience versus when you're speaking to 30, 100,000 people, you don't necessarily. So how would, and I know you said you've done some public speaking. So how do you do anything different when it comes to that one-on-one sales conversation versus speaking on stage? And what does that look like?
For me, no, but that's because when I'm speaking on stage, I try to speak to an individual because that seems to pull the whole audience in. Because if
Mm,
I have someone focused in my mind, like this is the person I'm trying to talk to on this point, it's a lot easier for me to be more communicative. That's a weird word. More ability to speak clearly, precisely with what they need, and how I want to affect them, because it's an exchange of energy. Now, I might be a lot more
mm,
excited depending on how the audience is. If they're an excited audience, I might, raise my voice, get excited. If I want to draw them in, I might whisper or pull them in. There's different techniques and stuff you can do, but it's still the same process. Public speaking is public speaking, whether it's one, 100, or 1,000. It's getting your message across. It's connecting to the person and letting them feel and see what you're trying to tell them.
mm. Yeah, I love that. And it really just talking at one person, that makes a lot of sense because when you start speaking in generalities or you're trying to speak to the whole audience, you're not really connecting with anybody because everybody's like, well, he's probably talking about somebody else, or she's probably talking about somebody else because, yeah, they're not talking to me. But if you start talking more specifically, even though, yeah, you might not reach some of the people because they may not be that person, you're going to reach more people because they're going to feel like, oh, if Joe's talking to me, okay, I better listen in. So you're exactly right. I love that. That's yeah. So I totally support that what you said there. And you mentioned something else as well about speaking with CEOs, and you have to go through your coaching sometimes, helping people be able to, or people have asked that question: How are you not afraid to talk to a CEO? So how are you not afraid to talk to the CEOs? Because I can imagine, somebody in a sales position or an entrepreneur that has to go to a bigger company and talk to them, or even if you're in the 9 to 5 still and you're doing a presentation and up to senior management stuff like that, that's got to be pretty nerve wracking. So what are some tips? How have you overcame that fear to be able to speak with those senior level executives?
Sure. And here's funny again. I'm going to go back to stories because I love stories. When I was doing oil and gas sales, we talked to the top 5% in the US. And then there's 5% that would actually invest in it. Well, they were CEOs, CFOs, and owners of businesses. So I would have to talk to them every day. And I
Mm,
learned very quickly that if I tried to talk to them like, you're great, you're awesome, you're amazing, they're going to look at me as an employee and blow me off. And I'm trying to get them to do an investment. So I talk to them like I would talk to my best friend. I literally go, hey, it's Phil there. And I'd literally go and just start talking like we're talking here as we're equals, and I can help them. And all of a sudden it changed the dynamic, because you have to think they're people too. They have feelings, they have emotions. And if everyone's kissing their butt and you come in and just talk to them like a normal guy and say, hey, Phil, you want to go out and get a bite to eat later on? Or you treat them like straightforward, normal, like we're equals, they're going to respect that and like it, because now they're not having to be leader mode. Now they're like, okay, cool. I can relax with this person. He knows his stuff. He understands where he's coming from. And maybe he has something to help me, because normally they have to make decisions and help others. When you're coming in and talking to them and you have a problem that you can solve for them, you want them to see you as an equal. You want to be direct and precise, but you want them to feel like you're a human. And it's a happy balance. But once you get it down, like I've talked to people that have owned $100 million companies, like I'm talking to you right now. And the funny thing is, they love it because most people don't talk to them that way. Most people are afraid. Well, he owns this. Well, yeah, but guess what? He was born the same way you were born. He grew up as a kid just like you. He had friends, he had fears, or she had fears, whatever. And it's just, I think we, in our heads, defeat ourselves. I'm like, I can't talk to them. It'd be like, let's use an example. Like I know Ed Milet, like we mentioned, we were talking about Ed Milet before. If Ed Milet was in the room, I would talk to him normal, like we're talking right now. Most people would be like, oh, it's Ed Milet. He's great. Wow. I bet you, I would bet you money that he would connect more with someone that talked to him like a normal person than someone that kissed his butt. Yeah. Or it was like, oh, you're wow, because you can feel that energy. You can feel that, is this person being authentic? Like authenticity for me is huge. And just because we mentioned this is why I help entrepreneurs and B2B professionals with sales, because a lot of times people have this thought process that sales is icky. And on stage, you're a lot of times presenting stuff. Sales isn't icky. Sales is problem solving. It's helping someone. And once you turn it to serving and helping, and you're going to be morally, ethically, and always in their corner, who better to sell them than you? Who better to help them than you? You know, it's just a change. It's a little NLP. It's just a change of mindset. So when you're talking to a CEO, CFO, whatever, talk to them like you talk to your best friend. Be respectful. Know your stuff, because they'll call you on your stuff quickly. And know you have less time with them than you would with, like, say, someone that's lower down the food chain, because time is precious. But if you're quick to the point and make them feel seen and heard, you're good.
Man, so many good points. So I go back to you talking about Ed Milet, and I feel like Andy Frisella has said something on a podcast. It's similar. I think he was talking about a situation. But think about, let's just take Ed Milet. We'll go back to him. If I went up to him, and most people, I think they would either be like, oh my gosh, Ed Milet, you're so amazing. I love your content. I love your new book, da, 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 and just go on. It's like this little fanboy, fangirl thing. Or be like, Ed, can I ask you a question about my business? The last thing that guy wants to do, especially if he's at an event and he just spoke, is to talk about business, have a fanboy or fangirl be talking to him. If you're like, dude, Ed, man, how's it going? You just start having that conversation. He's most likely going to be drawn to you because, like, hey, you're trying to treat him like he's a person and actually have that normal conversation. And people of that caliber, while they do like talking about business and stuff like that, they're probably not ready to have that conversation. Of course, it depends on the situation there. And I also think there's a guy, man, I was in college. We were kind of talking, and back in the day, before being married and everything, I used to struggle with speaking to women. And, we were just talking everything. He's like, the best looking girls are the loneliest girls.
Yep.
And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, they're the best looking girls. He's like, the reason why they're the loneliest ones is because everybody's so afraid to talk to them because they think everybody's talking to them.
Yep.
Like, so if you just treat them like they're normal, like they're not this God-given woman to man and everything, they're going to be more interested in you. And guess what? Nobody's going after them because they think everybody's going after them. And so it's just kind of like almost like a catch-22. So treat them normal, but at the same time, these people that are like way above you in quotes, there's nobody's really above you. Like you said, they're all the same. You're more likely going to have you're going to have more success with them, most likely, because nobody really goes to them, or nobody tries hard enough, and nobody treats them like a person. They put them on this pedestal that they don't even probably want to be on themselves. So I love everything that you said.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you said that, because I got two things. Let me go with the first one. with the hot girl that you mentioned. I remember when I was in ninth grade, right? Again, crazy time in life when you're young. I was a freshman. And there was a homecoming queen, and she was sitting by herself. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go talk to her. Now, mind you, I was in choir with her, so I did at least know her a little bit. I walked over to her at like the homecoming dance and go, hey, do you want to dance? And she's like, sure. Like, because no one had asked her. So here I am, a freshman, dancing with the homecoming queen who's a senior. And all of a sudden, all my friends are wild. Everyone else is wild because I just had the courage to ask.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. The other little point, like we were talking about Ed Milet and other people that I just think is funny, ask them something about them. Ask them how they're doing. Like, hey, you know what, Ed, I really loved your speech and all. I appreciate it. How are you today? What's going on? How can I help you? Because now you're distinguishing yourself. You're not only just saying, hey, you did great. You know, what can I do for you? Are you doing all right? You know, I know you just did this whole speech. Something to just connect with them a little bit more. It distinguishes you. Anytime you can distinguish yourself from the crowd, it moves you up a level.
Yeah, that's so good. And so then that actually got me spinning, thinking back to when you were talking to those CFOs, CEOs, and everything like that, especially when you're in the ranks, you're just the employee having to go present to them. One thing I've noticed in working with some of the people at work and everything on presentation skills, what they often do is they just come up with the problem. They present a problem and no solution. And it's like these guys, while they can give you that solution, they really want you to be the ones to find that solution. And then they're going to kind of like verify, like, hey, yeah, that goes along with where we're trying to go, because they're high level. They don't want to be thinking about the day to day. They want to just be thinking high level. And okay, based on your problem and your solution, yes, that will go along with what we're trying to do. Or they can say, hey, you know, that was a good solution, but because of these reasons, it doesn't go in the direction we're trying to go. Like, what about this? And they might put some input. And it's hard for them because, again, they don't have that day-to-day knowledge. So if you're just coming in with a problem, one, they're going to think you're complaining. And two, they don't know how to give you a great solution. But if you can start giving them ideas of what the solution is, they can come in and validate that. Like I said, go back to what's the strategy of the company and be able to say, hey, you know, yeah, that's good. Or, hey, let's look at this a little bit more and this area and everything. And so that's such an important thing. It really goes back to sales, right? You talk about that coming in with that solution. You know, you already know what their problem is. They know what their problem is, but what's the solution? That's what they want. So you're going to be 10 million times better presenter, even if you aren't great at presenting, if you can come in with that solution.
Yeah. Well, and if you are talking to a group of them and you think you have an idea, ask it in a question form. Be like, hey, this is the problems that we're seeing. What do you think about this? I think this might work. And then give your presentation on what you think it is. But when you ask it in a question form, most people want to help you. And if you come to them that way, especially if you're not used to talking to them, and it's a job that you're working with, and you want to make sure you don't know the line of that person. A little bit different than if you're selling a product to a different company. But just a little tip there that you can do. Ask them. Say, hey, this is what I think. What do you think? And now we're collaborating. Again, we're equal. We're collaborating.
Such a good point. Yeah. And make sure that you're trying to bring it as more of a collaboration, because if you position yourself, that's the thing I talk about on social media too. You can position yourself as an expert. Obviously, in a corporate environment, it's a lot harder because, you know, you're here, they're here. You know, they're above you. I mean, it's just shown in the corporate ladder structure. But you can still position yourself as somebody more of an equal, or at least on that project, that problem that you're trying to solve, you can position yourself as the equal and really the expert, because you're coming in, hey, here on our line here, or this product, we're seeing these problems. Here's a solution we want to create, and it's going to be able to do X, Y, Z. It's going to make it more efficient. There's going to be better quality, whatever that looks like. It's going to be better for the customer, the whole 9 yards. You can talk about that, and then they're going to be like, oh man, and they're going to be involved with you. And now, like you said, you're collaborating now instead of you're having just to take orders from that higher up. But obviously, being on the outside, that's a lot easier to be that person that's collaborating.
Yeah, well, it goes back to knowing your audience, who you're talking to. Same thing with public speaking. What's your group? What is their needs? What's their wants? What are they trying to accomplish? And then you connect, and you're good.
Yeah. So give us some tips on storytelling. I know being in sales,
Mhm.
we know that's a lot of salespeople. They have that gift of gab, if you will. So what are some ways that you found to create stories to match your audience? Because obviously you're selling the same product and you go through some kind of script, whether it's very regimented. It doesn't seem like it for you. Maybe some of the salespeople that you work with, they have a very regimented script, but you're talking to a different person. So that script can't be exactly the same every time. And usually stories is where that kind of changes. So how do you interchange those stories based on your audience?
When it depends on who I'm talking to and how they seem to be. So if they like to talk, because I do a lot of open-ended questions to get them
Hmm.
talking, because I don't want to talk when I'm selling. I want them to talk. When I'm public speaking, I want to talk. But what
Yeah.
I do is I get them going and then I listen to what they're saying. I think, okay, cool. How can I connect with this person? Like you mentioned the girl. I thought about the homecoming queen. You mentioned something else, and the story just pops in my head. So you just have some
Mm.
stories in your background because stories sell. Like
Hmm.
people buy the story. They don't always,
Yeah.
products are products. You could have the same phone, right? iPhone, Samsung,
Hmm.
whatever. But for me, the iPhone story works great because I like the iPhone. My wife hates iPhones. She loves the Samsung story because it was just more functional for her. And it's the same thing. It's just creating, letting them see the picture of what it's gonna be like. So if I was selling you, like, say, let's say fiber internet, and I'm just, telling you, hey, Q, you know what, Phil, you're not going to have any issues with your internet anymore. It's going to run seamlessly. So you're not going to have to wait for the video to upload, or like, I'll make you picture it. And I use words that will
Hmm.
make you picture it. Or you want to go on a trip. You know what, man? I was in Hawaii last year. I was in Kauai. We went to Waimea Canyon, which was great. It's like the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. But then we went to Hanalei Bay and I was in the waves and it was just perfect sun and perfect beach. You just start painting the picture of where they can see themselves at with whatever you're trying to get them to be
Mm.
invested in. So if it's a product, a picture of them in the product. If it's an experience like going to Hawaii, I want you to taste, feel, like I was on it's called a Zodiac boat. So we're riding this, bumping in the waves and all, but and that hurt. It was crazy because like you're just on a rubber raft out in the Pacific, which is crazy, man. But have you ever seen Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen Indiana Jones?
I think I've seen
Okay.
some of them.
In Jurassic Park when the helicopter comes through and there's that big opening? Well, in
Hmm.
Kauai, that's where they filmed it. So we got to go into the sea caves and some of these places where people haven't gotten to experience and see where they actually filmed it. Then we did some snorkeling. It was crazy awesome. See, now I'm making you want to go. And this is an experience I
Yeah.
actually had. Well, I'm making you want to go, but that's how you do it. And if you can do it
Yeah.
with something that you've done, it's more personable, it's more authentic, and it's more visual because you're not making up a story to connect. You're giving it life experiences of what you've done to connect. If you don't have that, but you have customers' experiences for whatever product or service, say, yeah, you know what? I worked with Jim. He had X, Y, and Z. That was his problems. Once we implemented these solutions, 100% no issues at all.
Mm.
So it's just
Mm.
depending on your story and how you want to backfill it, whether it's personal experience or a customer testimonial, or those are the two easiest ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I want to actually pick apart what you just said there, or just point out some things as you're going through. You're obviously giving great details, some about being specific and how it actually hurt, going up and down those waves. And then you asked me there close to the end about, hey, have you watched Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones?
Mhm.
That way I could then visually see that because I probably haven't been to Hawaii, which I haven't been to Hawaii, but whoever you're talking to may not have been either. But you mentioned that maybe I have done it, especially since I have. I'm like, oh, and I was able to visualize it even more rather than just listening to what you're saying. And obviously, you could have went into way more detail to give me that visualization there, but you instead try to use the movie. Okay,
Mhm.
and I guess if I would have said no, I'm guessing you probably would have talked about it a little bit more and just how, man, it just opens up is and
Yep,
go into
yep.
those details. But I like that you did that. And so that's an important thing for you, the audience, to keep in mind, that you can ask those questions like that to help give reference back to what you're trying to explain. So you're not having to explain every little detail about how green it was and how it just would seem so narrow. And the next thing you know, it open up in this vast expanse where if we saw everything and beautiful blue ocean right there, and then then up going snorkeling, all that stuff, and go into the story more. But you can kind of get them engaged by asking that question. Plus, then it's like, oh yeah, you know what? I got to think about this. Yeah, I have watched Jurassic Park. Okay, and then I'll let you know. And I'm kind of getting bought into your story even more because I'm getting that question asked and answering it. So yeah, really, really good little tips within there. I just want to point those out, that just in case the audience didn't notice some of those things. So, which obviously you're an expert on telling those stories and going through things like that. So I appreciate you saying that. Now, I
Yeah.
do want to ask a little bit of a selfish question here. I know this kind of went into a little bit more sales but we've been good about going to public speaking. But I do want to ask this question out of selfishness: is how do you translate or in your mind make that shift? Because that's something that I struggle with. It's to make the shift in my sales to be about serving and
Mhm.
not just about like, hey, I'm selling to get the customer to get the money. So how
Yep.
do I make that shift to service?
Mhm. Well, and a lot of people, I think, really want to, they just don't know how, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
When you make it about the customer to the point of if you don't have the right product for them, you refer them to someone else,
Mm,
that's when you know you're serving. When
mhm.
you're asking them questions instead of pitching them, that's when you know you're serving. When you are focused on, is this the best fit for them, which most entrepreneurs and people like you that I meet are that way,
Mm,
that's when you've gotten into service because it's just your mindset shift. Is this about me making money or is this about me solving a problem and helping them? If it's about me solving a problem and helping them, the money will come. If it's just about me getting a sale, people can normally feel that and then they're going to push back and off. And then it's just creating a little bit of urgency and finding out where they're at in the process. But it's just a little shift. And it's really in you. How are you approaching it? Are you approaching it to give or get?
mm, mm. And would you say, I guess another thing that I feel like, at least for myself personally, I'm always about giving, 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 and I never go for that ask, or I shouldn't say never, but I find myself not going for that ask a lot of times and just feeling like giving, giving, giving. So it's almost like I serve too much in a
Mhm.
way. Sometimes I feel like so how would I overcome that? Because I bet there's a lot of the people out there as well like that. They just feel like I just really want to help them out. You know, let me just go ahead and answer another question, and that could lead to 10 more questions, and then you never truly help that person the way you could if you actually coach them or
Mhm.
gave them your product, if you will, or I guess sold them the product. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, and it
explain that a
comes,
little bit.
sure. So it comes down, and it's a fine balance because you have people on both things. You have the people that just try to pitch you right off the gate, buy,
Mm,
and then you have people that keep giving and giving and giving. You have to. What I try to do is this: I'll give away one free coaching call so that you can
mm,
experience it, taste, feel, see, touch, right? Because that's what people like to do.
mm,
After that call, I'm like, hey, you know what, Phil? This is great. I want to help you as much as I can. You know, this first one's free. And if I can fix them in that first call, we're good. They weren't ready for me yet anyway. But then
yeah.
after that, and at the end of that call, go, you know, Phil, so what I'm doing is I have a 6-week course where I help you walk through the whole sales process. We're going to talk about prospecting, follow up, closing, overcoming objection, time blocking. And then on that 6 week, we're going to go over everything again just to make sure you have it set. But this is tailored toward your business, not just a cookie
Mm,
cutter sales presentation, tailored toward your business. And that's where I start making that shift. And then I'm like, so if you want to keep doing this, you know, it's going to be X. This is what this is to get my full attention. I have no problem helping you out right now. If you want to DM me a question every once in a while, but I have a business as well. But that's fair because I've already given them the exchange. It wasn't like I just said,
yeah.
hey, I'm telling you about it. I actually gave them, I did a call this week with a buddy of mine, and we went for a half hour and I gave him the information. Another friend of mine just wanted a one-time consult. So I was like, cool, it's 250. Like I just did a simple little, he didn't need a lot. He just needed me to help him with one thing. We fixed one thing and he made 10 grand. So
Yeah.
the value that you're giving them is a lot more than possibly sometimes what you're getting in the beginning, but then you just begin to build up and beginning to ask, you get more comfortable with asking. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it doesn't come across salesy because that's probably your question. It might be in sales, it might be in pushy.
Mhm.
Well, first, they're listening to you because you're an authority. Second, they've come into your world, they've asked for help. Third, if you don't help them, someone else is, and they're probably not going to take care of them as good as you. So with that, then it's just enough value. Well, what is the value of my offer? What is the value of what I'm giving? And then you just make up a price because a price is made up. Again, we talk about the iPhone. I would pay $1,000 for my iPhone because I did. My wife would pay
Mm,
$1 for the iPhone because she hates it. But you flip it, she'd pay $1,000 for the Samsung. I'd probably pay $1 for the Samsung because I like, it's just the value you bring at that point.
mm,
And then
mm.
just getting over it's not about you. Because we mentioned this too. We're afraid of people rejecting us. Well, they're not rejecting
Yep.
you personally. It might just be the offer or service you're giving. But if you don't offer it to them, how can they make a choice? And if you truly believe in what you're selling and what you're doing and how you're helping people, then you're offering your value is worth it to give them, because if not, you're holding back from them and you're not giving them a chance to level up or succeed, because we collapse times for people. You with public speaking, me with sales coaching and mindset. 15 years of sales coaching or 15 years of sales experience, plus all the different other things that I've learned. I don't know how long you've done public speaking, but that took you time, effort, hours, reading books, podcasts, all this stuff. So if I can come in and take that and what took me 15 years to get to where I am today, I can put it in like an hour session for 6 weeks in a row and they can 10x their business because they took my knowledge. That's a fair exchange. Same thing with you.
Hmm. So many good points. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna take that back. I've started doing some free consultations, and I've noticed that I've been getting more momentum with that. So definitely gonna have to go back and make sure at the end to show how, or pretty much go for the ask and say, hey, here's how I can
Mhm.
serve you to the full extent. If you like what we did on this first session, I can do this over the next 6 weeks or whatever my program is there. So I really like that. So I appreciate you telling us about that. But hey, I want to go to our last question here. And it's so totally off the path of what we were just talking about here. But if you could only speak one more message for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
One more message would be simple: love well, chase your dreams, live your life, have no regrets.
Hmm, nice. I like that.
It's simple, it's
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. Well, and that's I gotta ask, why that? I mean, why all that?
For me, if you love well, then you'll get love back. If you
Hmm,
chase your dreams, you have a chance of catching them. If you're willing to take risks to achieve those dreams, you're moving a lot forward. And if you enjoy life, you're going to be happy.
hmm, hmm.
Because
And
that's
you're
what we
free.
want. I mean, that's really what we want. When we talk
Yeah,
about making money or we want freedom or whatever we put in that box, you want your time back to do what you want with those you love, to help those you love, and to enjoy life.
yeah. I feel like if you have all those, you're going to create a lot more impact as well,
Mhm.
versus just doing something that just makes money or something that is stable or something like that. If you have all those, you love going after your dreams, all that, you're gonna be able to have a lot more. So love it, man. Love that. So Joe, if people want to reach out to you, whether it's be to ask for help with sales and mindset coaching, or just to follow you, get to know your podcast a little bit more, where are the best places for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. So easiest place is on Instagram. It's 150K podcast. That's mine. I reply to all the DMs. On Facebook, I have a group called 150K podcast. It's pretty easy. LinkedIn, it's my name. And then if you want to even just go to my podcast, 150K podcast on Spotify, Apple, that would give you a taste of what I do. But yeah, that's the easiest places to catch me.
Awesome. Well, Joe, appreciate you so much for coming on, man. It's so much value here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, my friend. And yeah, thank you so much.